Hello everyone and welcome back. So we are going to look at question 1 from previous question paper, but today we are going to look at the paper that was written in 2022. So basically this was the questions on the question paper. So the first one was solve for x, the other one 1.2, it was still solve for x here, and then also 1.3, this one is to simplify, 1.4 of which is to solve for x and y. Let's just get right to it. So here on question 1.1.1 is basically x squared plus 2x minus 15 being equal to 0, and then now we have to solve for the value of x. So you all know that when we have a quadratic format like this, we can either use a quadratic formula, which is x is equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So basically when you have a quadratic equation like this, you can use a quadratic equation. So let's say this is the format of a quadratic, and then you want to solve for the value of x, you can just plug in the value of a, the value of b, the value of c in this quadratic equation of ours and get the values. Or now you can do what? You can factorize to say, now you will do what? You will factorize to say you have two brackets here, you open two brackets. Now open two brackets, you will say now, okay, this is the value of x here, and then the of x here. You are saying you put in the value of x here because the x has no coefficient. Actually, the coefficient of x squared here is 1, so you will be right to put x and x here. And then the second step that you will have to do, you will now have to check what? You will have to check the factors of 15, because this last sign here is negative. You will check the factors of 15, that when you subtract them, they will give you the what? The number of which is the term coefficient of x, of the number that is at the middle, the term that is at the middle. So now we'll check for factors of 15 that when we subtract them, they will give us 2. So the factors of 15 that we will subtract them to give us 2 is going to be what? 5 multiplied by 3 is basically 15. So you say 5 and 3, you just put them anywhere, and then now you have to do what? To check the sign of the middle term here, which is positive. Because the last sign is negative, that means the signs will be different here, but then the bigger number will take the sign of the middle term. So 5 will be here, and then negative 3 will be here. And then after we do this, then we're going to apply what we call a zero factor law. So basically a zero factor law is actually saying that if ever x plus 5 is 0, that means everything on the left will be 0. Because remember, when you multiply any number by 0, it's actually equals to 0. So the zero factor law will say now, if x plus 5 is equal to 0, no, please forgive me, let me just erase here. If x plus 5 is equals to 0, or if x minus 3 equals to 0, therefore the equation will be true. To say now what is on the left of the equation is equals to 0, which is on the right of the equation. This number here is equals to 0, that means it will be 0 multiplied by x minus 3, that means the whole thing will be equals to 0. And also if ever x minus 3 is 0, that means it will be 0 multiplied by x plus 5, of which everything will be 0. And then now you will just have to say, now you transpose your 5 to be there, the value of x will be 5, and the value of x here, it will be equals to positive 3. So basically when you use your quadratic equation, you will also have to get the same answers. So let's look at question 1.1.2. So basically here is also solve for x, but in this case they give us a hint to say now we must actually use a quadratic equation. So they say leave your answer correct to the two decimal place, even if you know how to factorize. But if they say you must leave your answers to two decimal place, please don't hesitate to just go straight and use your quadratic equation. So basically we'll say x is equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So remember, this format is a quadratic format. That means now the coefficient of x squared will be a. Let me just write the quadratic format here to say now. Let's say it's going to be a. Coefficient of x squared is going to be a. And then the coefficient of what? Of x is going to be b. And then plus c is going to be the constant there. So this is our quadratic here. So we just have to substitute the value of a in place of a, the value of b in place of b, c in place of c. Okay, I know you already know that. So now let's just substitute here to say now, okay, this is x, but now what is the value of b? The value of b, be aware now, the value of b is going to be what? It's going to be -1. The coefficient of x is -1. So this negative here is the negative of the equation. So you're going to say, okay, the negative of equation subtract -1 of b. And then you say plus or minus the square root of b. You already know b is -1 all squared. Then minus what is the value of a? The value of a is coefficient of x squared, which is 5. Therefore, you just write the value of a, which is 5 here. 4 multiplied by 5, and then the value of c, which is the constant. And then in this case, the constant is how much? The constant is -9. So you substitute your constant as a -9. And then you divide everything by what? By 2 into, let's say, the value of the first term, which is actually the value of a, it will be 5. So you just substitute 5 here, and then you just punch everything as it is on your calculator to get the value of what? The value of your okay. So now the first value of x, which will be 1.45, and then or when you put the negative sign there, let's check here. The value of x, it will be negative 1.24. Okay, let's move to the next question. So the next question here is an inequality. So we must do what? We must solve for value of x. So basically when we have an inequality like this, what we want to do, we want to say like any side to be to have 0 on either left or right. So normally on our equation we always have what? 0 on the right. So we'll just transpose this here. There's a 3x to the left, and then we are left with 0 at the right. So that is what you want to have when you solve an equality, to have one side of your inequality to be 0, so that you can solve for values of whatever variable you're looking for. So now in this case we'll do what? We'll transpose 3 to put it here. Then it's going to be x squared subtract 3x, and it's going to be less or equals to 0. So now remember, when you have an inequality like this, you just solve it as if like you are solving the values of x, but then when you get to the point whereby you actually get the value of x, those values of x are going to be your critical values. It won't be the exact values of x that you're looking for. It's just going to be a critical point that will give you a domain of where your values of x will be. So now let's just do this one to say now here we can take out a common factor, which is x, because it's x, and then there's a common factor of x here, and then will be x here minus 3 less or equals to 0. So if we have it like this, then we can apply what? A zero factor law to get the values of x. So basically, the first value of x is that if x is 0, then the whole thing it will be 0 here. And then if x minus 3 is 0, then everything will be 0. So now we will say now our critical values. To say now the critical values, the first one, it will be where x is 0. It will be where x is 0. And then the other one, it will be where what? Where x is equals to 3. Because remember here, you will say what? X minus 3 equals to 0. And then your x will be how much? Your x will be equals to 3. So these values will be your values of x that you solved when you solve normally, 0 and 3. But now these values are not your actual values here in this case. They are just your critical values, your most important points that you're going to give reference to where you're going to determine the values of this inequality. So now when you have this here, you will just have to plot a graph here. So to say now you have a 0 here and you have a 3 here. Let's say this is a 0 and then this is a 3 here. So when you plot your graph, the first thing that you check what? You check the coefficient of your x squared. So now the coefficient of x squared here is positive. So if ever you check your coefficient of x squared here, let's make example. If you check here, you check everything here. On the equation or on the step that you're gonna check the coefficient or you're gonna do anything, you do everything there. So you just check here to say now, okay, now the coefficient of x squared is what is positive here, and therefore you're gonna draw your parabolic graph, because you can see now the equation that you have here is a quadratic equation, and quadratic is actually a parabolic function. So now you're going to draw a concave up. Why we draw a concave up is because the coefficient of x squared is positive. That's the first thing that you check, and then that's the first thing that you do. After you do this, so now you know now above your x-axis you have your y values being positive here, and then under your x-axis you will have your what? Your y values being negative. Let's say, for example, you have a Cartesian plane like this. You know now if you have x-axis here, this is your y-axis, so these values of y here will be positive, and then these values of y here will be negative. So now we want to determine what the question is asking us to now determine. You check at where you plotted your graph to say now which values of x here will be what? Will be less or equals to 0. Remember, something that is less than 0 is something that is negative. So the values that are less than 0, they will be here at the bottom of the graph. That means now the values of x, whereby x squared minus 3 is going to have values that is less than 0. It will be what? It will be between 0 and negative 3. So you're just gonna do what? You're just gonna say 0 between less or equals to 0, less, where x is greater or equals to 0, or where x is less or equals to 3. Don't forget the equal sign, because there is an equal sign. It says less or equals to there. Okay, and now let's look at this other question here. So in this other question, they say given now a plus 64 over a is equals to 16, we have to solve for value of a. Okay, so let me just rewrite. Is a plus 64 over a equals to 16. Now we have to solve for the value of a. So basically, if we have a variable at the denominator and we can easily remove it by multiplying, then we can multiply by a throughout the whole equation. So now we're going to say what? We're going to say a multiplied by a. You see, you multiply every term here, and then we want to say a multiplied by 64 over a over a, and then it's equals to 16 multiplied by a. The reason why we are multiplying by a is that we want to get rid of this a at the bottom here. So now this a will cancel out with this a here. But now you're going to be left with what? With a squared plus 64 equals to 16a. So now when we transpose 16 to put it here, every time you want to be left with a 0 here, so it's going to be a squared minus 16a plus 64 equals to 0. Okay, so when you get to this point, remember, if you don't know how to factorize, you can use your quadratic equation. Don't just waste time, just put everything into quadratic, and then everything is easy for you to solve when you put it on a quadratic. So now if ever you know how to factorize also, you will just open two brackets to say, now let's say we have two brackets here, okay, equals to what? Equals to 0. Because the coefficient of a is actually 1 here, then we can write to say this is a, and it will be a this side. But now you have to check what? To check the last term to say now, okay, this last term sign here is positive, to say what will be the factors of 64 that when we add them, they will give us the middle term, which is now 16. So basically, when you put on your calculator to say 8 times 8 is going to give us 64, and then 8 plus 8 is going to give us how much? 16. So we're just going to write what? We're just going to write 8 here. We're just going to write 8 here. Okay, so now if this last sign is positive, it means our signs are going to be the same, but now we're going to take the sign of the middle term, so it's going to be -8, -8. Okay, so now basically the value of a, it will be what? It will -8 equals to 0, because remember, if this is 0, then everything is 0. If this is 0, then everything. So now this is the same thing. So the value of a -8 equals to 0. Therefore, we will have only one value of a, which is how much? Which is a being equals to 8. Okay. Okay, so the value of a is equals to 8 here. Let's just write it there, and then erase everything here. Okay, so now question 1.22, it says that hence solve for x. So if ever a problem says hence, that just know that you're going to use the information that you got from the previous answer to solve this current problem. So this problem, it says hence solve this equation. So basically the equation that we have is what? Is 2 to the power of x 2 to the power of 6 minus x being equal to 16. So because we have here the word hence, or solve this one after we have solved the value of a. So basically we want this equation of ours here to get a format of the similar problem that we have solved here. So we can do that by doing what we can see now. We can separate this one here to say this is 2 to the power of x, and then we had what? This is 2 to the power of 6 multiplied by 2 to minus x. Multiply the same base, you add the exponent. So I'm just expanding it here. Same thing when we multiply, we're just going to add, it's going to be 6 minus x. And then now when we are here, we can just put this one at the bottom because it's a reciprocal. So we have 2x plus what? 2 to the power of 6. 2 to the power of 6, you put it on your calculator, is how much? Is 64. So we're going to have 64 all over 2 to the power of positive x, because you're moving it from the top and writing it at the bottom, then it changes sign to be what? To be positive. The exponent changes sign to be equals to 16. So basically when we are here, we can see now, okay, this thing here, this format of ours is actually the same as a given format on the previous question. But now this 2x, 2 to the power of x is actually representing the value of a. If you can see the same thing. But now we know now 2 to the power of x is what is actually representing a, but now a is equals to 8 because we have solved a. Now when we solve here, we're going to just put 8 into a calculator. 8 equals to, and then you say shift fact, then it's going to give us a 2 to the power of x, and then 8 can be written as 2 to the power of 3. And then when we have the same base, we can do what? We can actually create the same base. We can drop what? We can drop the exponent. Therefore, x will be equals to 3. Okay. Now let's move to the next question, whereby now we have to simplify without using a calculator. So in this question here, we have a square root of 2 to the power of 1002 plus 2 to the power of 1006 actually, all divided by 17, 2 raised to the power of 998. Okay, so basically when you have a problem like this, what you want to do, you want to analyze first how are you going to approach it. But in this case here, we can say, okay, we can just expand this one so that you can have what, the same exponent as this one, so that we can take it out as a common factor, and then maybe it might lead us somewhere. Or if ever that was not the case, we can just make these two here to have an exponent of the same as this one at the bottom, and then if that's the case, we take it as a common factor, we divide, and then we know we can solve the problem there. So let's just do it with the both methods. So let's start with the first method to say now, okay, let's just expand it here to be what? Okay, this one of ours is actually 1002, but we can do what? We can write this 2 to the power of 1006 as 2 to the power 1002 multiplied by 2 to the power of 4. So 1002 plus 4 is going to be what? 1006. So we have not changed anything. And then this is going to be 17 multiplied by 2 to the power of 998. Okay, so now we can take out a common factor here, which is 2 to the power of 1002. So when you take out the common factor, so which is 2 to the power of 1002. That means you're gonna be left with what? With 1 plus 2 to the power of 4. Okay, because now when you take out the common factor here, this one goes out. When you multiply, it's gonna give you 2 to the power of 1002, and then when you multiply there, it's gonna give you 2 plus 4 there, it will get you to 1006. Now you have to divide with what? We divide by 17 or 2 all to the power of 998. Okay, so now we can simplify this one that's here in the inside here. So it's basically 2 to the power of 4. We know 2 to the power of 4 is equals to 16 plus 1, then it's going to be 17. So basically we know here inside the 17, let's just write it here to say now 2 to the power of 002 into 17, all divided by what? By 17 multiplied by 2 to the power of 998. So we know now this 17 can cancel this 17 out, and therefore remember, now when you divide the same base, you subtract the exponent. So basically we're gonna have what? We're gonna have a square root of 2 raised to the power of 1002 subtract by 998. So when you put that 1002 subtract 998, the answer is going to be 4. The square root of 2 to the power of 4. And therefore, remember, we square it out here is just going to be what? 2 to the power of 4 over 2, which is equals to 2 to the power of 2, and which is equals to 4. Okay, that was the first approach. So we can also approach it this way. Let's say, for example, let's see if this will work, because this one we have just seen it worked. Let's see if now we would approach it this way. Okay, let's say now we want to do what? We want to make sure that we cancel the 2, this 2 at the bottom. So for us to cancel the 2 at the bottom, you will just have to do what? To, let's say, square root of what? Of to the power of 1002 plus 2 to 1006 all over 17 multiply by 2 to the power of 998. So basically here we will want to do what? We will want to convert to say these denominators here, these numbers at the top here, they must have the same exponent as the number that is at the bottom here. So we're going to say 2 to the power of 998 multiply, okay, is a square root here, multiplied by 2. Let's say now you say 1002 subtract 998, therefore it's going to give us 4, to say 2 to the power of 4 here, plus, and then you do the same thing, 2 to the power of 998, and then we say plus, let's say 1006, therefore it's going to be how much? There it's going to be 8 here. It's going to be 8. It's going to be 2 to the power of 8 here. Okay, let me just write it here as expanded already. So we just raise it to say now it's going to be multiplied by 2 to the power of 8. Okay, and then over the bottom is going to be 17. 2 to the power of 998. So when we are here, we know at the top we can take out the common factor as a 2 to the power of 998. So we say equal sign, the square root of what? Of 2998 as a common factor. To say now we are left with 2 to the power of 4, which is plus a 2 to the power of 8 divided by 17 multiplied by what? By 2 to the power of 998. So you can cancel this out, therefore you know you are left what is 2 to the power of 4? 2 to the power of 4 you already know is 16, and then what will be 2 to the power of 8? 2 to the power of 8, it will be 256. So I guess that they can't know that you have used a calculator to get that 2 to the power of 8. You will say you are a mathematician, but then that is fine. So it's 16 plus 256 all divided by 17. So basically what you will do, you will just add what is at the top here, which is 16 plus 256, and therefore give you what is going to give you 272 divided by 7. And then now 272 divided by 7 is going to give you how much? By 17, actually, not 7, sorry about that. 272 divided by 17 is going to give us 16. Therefore, we have a square root of 16. And then now we know the square root of 16 is going to give us 4. Okay, so basically they said we must solve this thing without using a calculator. So if you use this method, you will see now they will like suspect that you have used the calculator, but they don't care about those big values. They actually care about the steps that you took here. So this method will still be correct if you approached it this way, because you show understanding. You just apply the calculator there and there. I don't think they will be penalized. So the last question, it will be a simultaneous question to solve for value of x and y. So now when you solve for value of x and y, you just check for the simplest equation of which you can either make x or y the subject of the formula. So in this case, we can see in this equation, we can easily make what y the subject of the formula. So we're just going to start with that to say now y will be a subject of the formula. That means we transpose this y to this side is going to be positive, and then take 2 to the other side, that will be negative. Therefore we will have what? We'll have 2x minus 2. It will be our what? Our equation 1a, if that was our equation a. And then we take this equation now, we substitute it where? We substitute it at this equation. We substitute it here. So we take this equation, we substitute it here where we see y, and therefore we're going to have what? We're going to have 1 over x minus 3 into where we see y, we put 2x minus 2 equals to 1. And then now we just simplify to say 1 over x, 1 over x, and then it's going to be negative 3 multiplied by 2x, it's going to be negative 6x. The negative 3 multiplied by negative 2, then it's going to be positive 6, being equals to what? Being equals to 1. Okay, so now you can do what? Now you can transpose 1 to put it this side. Therefore, it's going to be what? Negative. So it's going to be negative 1 over x minus 6 plus 6 minus 1, which is going to give us 5. So here there's still x. So now when you have an equation like this, remember when you get, if you want to get rid of a variable that is only on one denominator, you must multiply everything by what? By that value that is at the denominator. So we'll just say multiply everything by x, 1 over x multiplied, then negative 6x multiplied by x, and then we're going to say 5 multiplied by x equals to 0, and therefore we know this x will cancel out here, then we will be left with 1, and then it's going to be minus 6x squared, and then it's going to be plus 5 being equals to 0. So basically when we take everything on this side to write it on the other side, we'll be left with what? With a positive 6x squared. Okay, this 5 here has x, and then negative 5x, and then this one, when it goes that side, it's going to be negative 1 being equals to 0. So at this point we see now, okay, our x squared has a coefficient, so we don't even want ourselves with factorizing, but you can still factorize. So now I just advise you, so that you cannot make things be complicated, you just go straight and use your quadratic equation. So when you apply your quadratic equation there, you will say what? Now say x is equals to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Therefore now you substitute the values to say now the value of b is going to be negative 5 plus or minus the value of b is what? Is negative 5 all squared minus 4. What is the value of a? The value of a will be 6, and the value of c will be minus 1, all divided by 2, the value of a, which is 6, and therefore the first value of x will be equals to, we just put everything on the calculator. And then when you put it in your calculator, the value of x will be what? Will be 1 when you put a plus there, or the value of x will be, let's check what it will be when you put a negative, uh, 1 over 6. Thank you very much.